Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of The Great Ruler Season 2 Part 17 based on novel. So let's start. The gigantic Spirit King was sent smashing backwards. When its giant feet descended towards the ground, the entire earth, as well as the mountain range, violently shook a few times at that very instant. However, the Spirit King quickly stabilized its body as it started to feel some anger. The brilliance around the gigantic body grew increasingly thick as the brilliance enveloped the entire mountain range. Roar! While it roared, it clenched its giant hand. Spiritual energy that blotted the skies converged, transforming into a storm. With a pat of its giant palm, a spiritual energy beam, which was approximately 100 feet wide, shattered the horizon. Before violent it smashed towards the slender and beautiful figure. The Spirit King did not know any spiritual arts, however, it possessed boundless spiritual energy that even a heavenly completion stage expert would find hard to compare with. With this vigorous spiritual energy being its shield, the eruption of force from every movement was easily able to torch the mountains and boil the seas. As the spiritual energy shattered the horizon, the mountain range below was smashed till a gigantic fissure was formed. The mountain tops and peaks along the side continued to shatter and explode. Zhao Qingshan, Xu Huang, Mu Fengyang and the rest that had rushed over from the distance felt a palpitation in their hearts. The strength of the Spirit King truly was much more tyrannical than before. No wonder why no one had the idea of fighting a Spirit King these past few years. It turned out that the mature ones were, unexpectedly, even more frightening. Luo Li's jade-like hand gripped her longsword tightly. The girl gently breathed out a mouthful of air as her beautiful bosom rose and fell. A chill akin to the frost filled her clear eyes as her jade-like finger ran across the body of the sword, causing a dark red color to appear on the surface. That smeared dark red color was rapidly absorbed by the body of the sword. In the next instant, the long sword that rippled with azure-light fluctuations started to emit a faint humming noise. Little traces of watery fluctuations started to appear on the sharp edges of the sword. This caused it to look akin to a long sword made from waves, looking extremely mysterious. Luotian Sword Art Luo Water Transforming Sword. The Luotian sword in Luo Li's hand vibrated faintly as the sword edges danced. Akin to complex sword flowers, vigorous spiritual energy erupted out like waves, before she furiously slashed down. As she slashed down, an azure sword light howled out. It transformed into a gigantic sword-like river 100 feet long. The river surged forward, similar to an azure dragon that spiraled above Luo Li in the sky. The river water that seemed gentle, was filled with dense sword chi. Once the sword-like river was completely formed, it explosively shot out, violently smashing directly against the incoming spiritual energy beam. Bang! A gigantic sound rang across the sky as the berserk spiritual energy, as well as the swift and fierce sword chi, swept out, turning the entire mountain range into a disastrous state and complete disorder. Luo Li's beautiful figure faintly trembled as she was sent back 2 steps. However, the long sword in her jade-like hand did not have the slightest degree of relaxing. Her beautiful eyes stared at the gigantic Spirit King, without even half the intent to retreat. The Spirit King furiously roared. Its 2 attacks were blocked by the figure in front of it that was akin to an ant. This caused it enter an even more berserk state, wanting to pat the figure in front of it into dust. Under its fury, it stepped out again, causing the earth to move and the mountains to tremble. It erratically attacked, akin to a storm erupting and sweeping out. Facing its attacks, the young lady gripped her long sword. Without the slightest hint of yielding, the sword chi rushed towards the sky, blocking the incoming attacks. Zhao Qingshan and the rest watched this spectacle unfold itself from afar while being in a daze, before feeling a cold chill run up their backs. Although Luo Li's attacks were meant for defending, being able to defend till now under the attacks of the Spirit King, wasn't it also a kind of valiantry? Due to this point, if her position was exchanged for any of them, none of them would be able to accomplish that. They never thought that the young girl that was always standing quietly beside Mu Chen's side, other than her absolutely stunning appearance and temperament, would actually have such strength that would cause people to be stunned. How formidable! Unable to contain himself, Xu Huang softly sighed as his gaze turned complicated. Beside him, Xu Qingqing had also faintly bit her lip. She stared at the young girl that continued to have an outstanding temperament under the attacks of the Spirit King, which even made other people feel stunned. Jealousy and dejection that were hard to conceal erupted from her eyes. Compared with the latter, she truly appeared inferior to her. However, it is still too difficult for her to fend off the Spirit King by herself. The area she could defend is getting smaller and smaller. She might not be able to hold on for much longer. Her defense will fail. Xu Huang stared at the place in the far distance. At the mountaintop there, a seated figure was faintly discernible there. This caused his eyes to faintly narrow. Was that Mu Chen? What was he preparing? Could it be that the two of them truly wanted to deal with this Spirit King? However, was that possible? Although Mu Chen was not simple, his strength was, after all, at the quasi-heavenly transformation stage. Xu Huang stared at the figure as his forehead started to wrinkle. As Luo Li was holding back the footsteps of the Spirit King, Mu Chen was thoroughly blocked of the interference of the outside world. His mind had converged as spiritual seals continuously condensed around his body. However, the amount of spiritual seals had gradually started to reduce in speed as he reached around 150 spiritual seals. According to the number, most rank 4 spiritual array masters were able to condense 100 to 200 spiritual seals. Once someone was able to break past 200 spiritual seals, that person would possess the qualifications to be promoted to a rank 5 spiritual array master. Naturally, that did not mean that a spiritual array master that was able to condense enough spiritual seals would be able to arrange a spiritual array. Spiritual seals were extremely complicated things. Spiritual seals were only the foundation of forming the structure of the spiritual arrays. How one perfectly created the mysteriously complicated links between these spiritual seals and caused them to shoot out their greatest and strongest power would be the capability that a spiritual array master needed to possess. Those spiritual array masters of ancestral rank could casually arrange a spiritual array that might be formed from tens of thousands of spiritual seals. With that degree of complication, even a sovereign-level expert, with the talent in spiritual arrays, as well as practice over the years, would not be able to arrange it properly. Naturally, as of now, Mu Chen was far from being considered as an ancestral rank. On the path of being a spiritual array master, he was obviously still at the initial phase of his journey. The current him still required to ponder on how to settle the situation before himself. As for these 150 spiritual seals, they were obviously unable to support the spiritual array that he needed to arrange. He took a deep breath in his heart, gradually making his mind calm down. His consciousness had completely sank into the heart array state. As of now, Mu Chen had already mastered the heart array state to the point of perfection. According to his estimation, the level of his heart array state should be considered as a high-leveled heart array state. Due to entering this kind of state, the scenery from the outside world was seemingly reflected into his heart. This made him feel like he had seemingly reached a perfect level of mastery in this absolute calmness and tranquility. However, following the increase of his strength, as well as the increase in the grade of the spiritual arrays arranged, the benefits that the state had brought him also gradually weakened. Mu Chen knew that people who had reached rank 3 spiritual array master would have a chance to comprehend the heart array state. However, this kind of state might be only considered as a low-grade state in the eyes of those ancestral rank spiritual array masters. However, although the heart array state might not be of a high grade, it was a kind of foundation. Spiritual array masters that were able to master the heart array state to an even higher degree would then be able to comprehend the higher and deeper states. As Mu Chen sank deeper into the spiritual array state, his mind was seemingly peeled off from his body, as he focused on the condensation of spiritual seals. He could feel the faint fluctuations of the spiritual energy within, as well as a faint linkage that was extremely hard for others to detect. With a faint thought of his mind, he could see the condensed spiritual energy quietly disintegrating and fluttering away. However, without waiting for the spiritual energy to dissipate, with another thought, the dissipating spiritual energy started to condense and form into spiritual seals. In addition, it seemed that the formation this time was even more condensed. Furthermore, there was some surplus of spiritual energy that started to slightly leak out. The spiritual seals that had been formed around Mu Chen's body started to dissipate. While dissipating, the spiritual seals started to recondense and take shape. Formation, dissipation, formation, dissipation. It had seemingly formed a perfect cycle. Under this kind of cycle, there was no unwanted consumption of spiritual energy. Instead, the number of spiritual seals present started to quietly increase. At the same time, extremely huge changes appeared within the spiritual energy that had condensed to form the spiritual seals. Mu Chen's mental state was as calm and tranquil as water. He had seemingly sank into this dissipation-condensation cycle. This continued for quite some time. Under this mental state that had not the slightest presence of ripples, there seemed to be the appearance of water droplets dripping down, creating rings and rings of ripples. Within the depths of his mind, there seemed to be some undulations. There seemed to be an eye-like object blinking slowly due to the ripples, and it appeared to open its eye. At the instant the invisible eye opened, a myriad of living things under this stretch of the world appeared within the heart of Mu Chen. Fast forward to the fight between Luo Li and the Spirit King. Xu Huang, Zhao Qingshan, and the rest were secretly watching from a distance. The pleasant green scenery in the further distance, the undulating spiritual energy of the world. That invisible eye examined the world, and everything appeared extremely mysterious and strange to it. This is the heart eye? Murmuring sound seemed to ring within Mu Chen's heart as the ripples disappeared. Mu Chen's eyes suddenly opened, those black pupils appeared extremely deep and abstruse. He knew that he could only touch this state temporarily, and was unable to maintain it for long. Therefore, he had to grasp this short duration of time. His hands suddenly came together to form seals as the spiritual seals around his body shattered, seemingly, at the same time. Spiritual energy rippled as spiritual seals condensed and formed almost instantly. Within a short span of a number of breaths, light erupted from around Mu Chen's body. The number of spiritual seals had instantly exceeded 200. The abstruseness of Mu Chen's eyes became increasingly thick. With a wave of his sleeve, hundreds of spiritual seals rushed towards the sky, rippling the air as they assimilated with the world. In the next moment, the spiritual energy of this stretch of the world instantly turned berserk. Everyone could see, as of now, an incomparably gigantic glowing array slowly taking shape in front of Mu Chen. In the next moment, a spiritual energy hurricane seemed to blow within this stretch of the world. Spiritual energy that was visible to the naked eye converged to form a glowing river, endlessly streaming and condensing towards the gigantic glowing array. That's a spiritual array? In the distance, Xu Huan, Zhao Qingshan, and the rest looked towards the incomparably gigantic spiritual array. A jolt went through their hearts as shock erupted from their eyes. A spiritual array that possessed such influence and power was at least a fifth-ranked spiritual array. Could it be that the current Mu Chen was actually able to arrange a spiritual array of such a rank? How is that possible? As the gigantic light array in the air slowly took shape, countless spiritual energy light rays explosively shot out. After mutually weaving and taking shape, they formed an outline of an incomparably gigantic and complicated array diagram. Bang! Bang! The spiritual energy within this stretch of the world turned rebellious, as spiritual energy erupted forth akin to streaks of light, endlessly streaming and pouring into the spiritual array. In the front, the Spirit King, who was relying on his mad and violent attacks to force the defending Luo Li to ceaselessly retreat, suddenly saw the gigantic spiritual array from in the sky before it. As it was formed by the convergence of the spiritual energy of the world, it was naturally extremely sensitive to such a gigantic gathering of spiritual energy. From the spiritual array, it could sense a considerably astonishing amount of power within it. This made it feel somewhat uneasy. Roar? While roaring, it grabbed a gigantic boulder hundreds of meters large. Spiritual energy enveloped the boulder, before the Spirit King violently threw it, shooting it towards the glowing array that was gradually taking shape in an attempt to destroy it. Swish! However, just as the gigantic boulder was thrown, a gigantic azure glowing sword howled. It proceeded to cut the gigantic boulder up, transforming into broken rocks that blotted the skies as they dropped down. The Spirit King furiously roared. It fanned its giant palm out once again, carrying along frightening spiritual energy as it furiously smashed down towards the young girl that was blocking it all, along with a single trace of mercy. Under its berserk attack, the glowing sword surrounding Luo Li's body gradually shrank, as it was obviously being thoroughly suppressed. On the jade-like hand that was tightly gripping the long sword, fresh blood started to ooze out. However, she tightly bit her lip, refusing to allow the Spirit King to pass her. How could blocking the Spirit King's terrifying attacks by oneself be an easy matter, even with a divine weapon like the Luotian sword in her hand? However, it was, after all, still in its sealed state. However, regardless of everything, she would never retreat, as Mu Chen was behind her. The current him obviously could not be agitated or disrupted. Roar! The Spirit King furiously roared as its attacks became increasingly erratic. The sword glow that enveloped Luo Li's body gradually became teetering on the brink of collapse. In the sky behind her, the light array became all the more brighter. Following the gradual completion of the outline of the diagram, the spiritual array faintly took shape. From the looks of it, it seemed like a gigantic black lotus. Is that the butchering demonic lotus spiritual array? Upon seeing this spiritual array that was not considered foreign, the foreheads of Xu Huang and the rest wrinkled. They naturally knew that Mu Chen had used this array in his exchange with Li Xiantong. Although it was formidable, it was, seemingly, still a fourth-rank spiritual array. However, how could it have such prestige and power? If it was a rank 4 spiritual array, it would obviously be a very stupid thing to use it to deal with this Spirit King. No? Xu Huang's eyes suddenly narrowed, as he could see another glowing outline beside the already formed Black Lotus glowing array. Unexpectedly, it was another gigantic black glowing lotus. Unexpectedly, this spiritual array had 2 black lotuses. Although from the looks of it, it was just another black lotus. However, its might and power had a gargantuan change. Although Xu Huan wasn't a spiritual array master, he was able to feel that this current spiritual array was absolutely something that the previous, butchering demonic lotus spiritual array could not compare to. No wonder the spiritual array that this fellow displayed before was not complete, Xu Huang thought. Naturally, he did not assume that this spiritual array was created by Mu Chen. He was very clear that this kind of capability was absolutely not something that Mu Chen could possess. Therefore, there was only one reason, which was that the spiritual array that Mu Chen had displayed before was not complete. The 2 black lotuses slowly revolved in the air, as the entire stretch of the world seemed to turn much darker and deeper, with gales suddenly erupting. Mu Chen raised his head to look at the formed butchering demonic lotus spiritual array, before exhaling deeply, spitting out a lump of white air. Following his increasing profundity in his attainments in spiritual arrays, his feelings and comprehension of the butchering demonic lotus spiritual array had obviously grown deeper. If not, he would not dare to try to use it in a situation like this. As of now, he had already managed to feel the depths of the spiritual array that was once mysterious and unfathomable in his eyes. According to his estimates, the butchering demonic lotus spiritual array should have 4 parts. If he could complete the entire formation, there should be 4 black lotuses appearing. Naturally, that form of the butchering demonic lotus spiritual array might be a 7th-rank spiritual array. Its might would be terrifying enough to scare people. Even a heavenly completion stage expert would turn to dust under a spiritual array of that rank. The current Mu Chen still did not have the capability to reach that level. Even the 2nd Black Lotus that he had condensed was due to him touching the heart-eye state by chance. Therefore, wanting all 4 lotuses to appear would obviously need some time. Luo Li. Mu Chen's pupils that seemingly reflected the image of the 2 black lotuses looked towards the berserking Spirit King. A cold glint surfaced in his eyes as he gently spoke out. Upon hearing Mu Chen's voice, Luo Li slightly nodded her beautiful head before her lovable figure swiftly retreated. Landing beside Mu Chen, her hand was still gripping her longsword, taking precautions while staring at the Spirit King. Roar! After losing the obstruction, the Spirit King turned its eyes, sparkling with brilliance, at Mu Chen. Without the slightest degree of hesitation, it immediately stepped forward with an earth-moving and mountain-shaking pace. As it furiously stepped over the land, its figure rushed towards the horizon, akin to a radiant meteor. Carrying a frightening impact force, it violently arrived before Mu Chen. Bang! Rumble! Under the impact, the mountain peak that Mu Chen and Luo Li were standing on collapsed, and the surrounding earth caved in. Mu Chen's expression remained indifferent. With a change of his hand seals, the two gigantic black lotuses in the air suddenly faced towards each other. Spiritual energy erratically condensed within the center of the lotuses before they shot out. Bang! Two glowing spiritual energy pillars that seemed almost corporeal collided at the same time. However, there wasn't any repulsion nor explosion. Instead, they rapidly fused together. In a short span of a few breaths, the brilliance faded. Even the gigantic spiritual arrays had slightly dissipated. While this happened, a 3-meter large glowing lotus appeared. Although this glowing lotus wasn't large, the fluctuations radiating from it were considerably terrifying. The glowing lotus contracted and expanded, akin to a beating heart, while giving off a demonic and strange sensation. Mu Chen looked at the 3-meter-high demonic and strange glowing lotus. With a flick of his finger, the glowing lotus explosively shot out. Creating a streak of light as it traveled, it rushed towards the gigantic radiant meteor that was headed towards Mu Chen. The speed of the two were exceedingly quick. Within a short span of a number of breaths, they were about to collide high in the sky. However, at the instant they were about to collide, a cold smile rose from the corner of Mu Chen's mouth as his palm suddenly clenched. Boom! The radiant meteor that the Spirit King had transformed into suddenly, intensely, vibrated. Within the Spirit King's body, there seemed to be a dark black fire starting to burn as it scuttled around. Those black flames were not thick. However, with the body of the Spirit King that was brimming with spiritual energy, it created quite a big ruckus. As the black flames moved about, it started to continuously ignite and burn the spiritual energy. This was the lump of black flames that Mu Chen had sneakily placed into the spirit crystal. When the Spirit King had devoured it into its body, it had also devoured the black flames. Although the Spirit King had boundless spiritual energy, and these black flames were incapable of doing any harm to it, it had given Mu Chen an advantage in this battle. Indeed, as what Mu Chen had expected, the black flames were quickly annihilated the endless streams of spiritual energy. However, the eye-piercing brilliance around the Spirit King's body still turned dim for an instant. It was at this very instant that the demonic and strange glowing lotus shot violently towards the Spirit King's chest. Bang! A gigantic and clear sound resonated across the stretch of the world as spiritual energy shockwaves swept out. Spiritual energy hurricanes had seemingly erupted in this stretch of the world, as countless giant rocks were swept into the air, before being shattered into dust. The gigantic body of the Spirit King shot backwards, towards the far distance, under the terrified gazes of several people, before heavily impacting the ground. The entire mountain range vibrated at this instant, as a number of mountain peaks in the distance were smashed till they became flat ground. The Spirit King's gigantic body was within the rubble. Xu Huang, Zhao Qingshan, and the rest casted their gazes over. After being smashed head-on by such a formidable spiritual array, even the Spirit King could not ignore such damage, right? Under their attentive gazes, the distant mountain range started to shake again. Within the dust that blotted the skies, a gigantic figure started to stagger and stand up. It's still alive. A tremor shook their hearts, however, there was some unexpected rejoice in them. Mu Chen stood at the mountain peak and fixed his eyes on the gigantic figure in the distance that had stood up within the dust that blotted the sky. However, there wasn't even the slightest degree of fluctuation on that handsome and outstanding face as he quietly continued to watch it. As the dust slowly scattered, the Spirit King came into view once again. However, as of now, it did not have the boldness and powerful feeling it previously had. On its chest was a foot-long hole, while its surroundings were filled with cracks. Those cracks had seemingly crawled over half of its body. There was even one crack that extended from its chest all the way to the eye-piercing crystal on his forehead. Xu Huang and the rest had similarly noticed this spectacle, and unable to control themselves, the corner of their mouths twitched. Terror even flashed within Mu Fengyang's eyes, as no one could have thought that Mu Chen was actually able to injure the Spirit King to such a degree. Boom! The Spirit King faced the sky and roared, as it could feel the heavy injuries that it had suffered. The spiritual energy was rapidly escaping from it. Although it did not have the sensory organs to feel pain, The escaping spiritual energy made it feel anger and fury. The earth trembled again as it suddenly rushed forward in a berserk fashion. Its target was, obviously, Mu Chen. Seeing the aggressive and overbearing Spirit King rushing over, Mu Chen's forehead slightly wrinkled. Although the latter had suffered serious injuries, an injured tiger was still dangerous. Regardless of whatever happened, the Spirit King was still an existence comparable to a heavenly completion stage expert. If not for the black flames he had hidden within the Spirit King's body that had done miraculous work, Mu Chen might not have been able to injure it to such a degree. He tightly clenched his hands as spiritual energy burning with black flames erupted from his body. However, at this moment, a cold and jade-like hand grabbed him. Luo Li gave him a faint smile, before speaking in a gentle voice, "Can you let me finish this up?" She was able to see that Mu Chen's current consumption was enormous. Although the Spirit King had suffered serious injuries, the assault before its death would also be very terrifying. In her case, she was more suitable to finish it than Mu Chen. Hearing her words, Mu Chen paused for a bit, before smiling while nodding his head. Luo Li started to slowly walk forward. Her jade-like hand that was gripping the Luotian sword slowly rose up, pointing towards the incoming Spirit King. Within those beautiful eyes, a swift and fierce shadow was condensed within. Mu Chen was able to feel that the spiritual energy of this region of the world was fleeing and scattered, as it was unable to withstand the sword qi radiating from the body of Luo Li's sword. This sword qi even made Mu Chen's heart palpitate and jump. Looking at the exquisite, delicate and absolutely beautiful face that was akin to Chinaware, the little bit of graveness on his face grew by a bit more. Luo Li had planned to thoroughly destroy the Spirit King before her eyes. Sword qi that was akin to waves undulated across this stretch of the world. This sword qi was not extremely swift, not fierce, however it gave people a heart-palpitating feeling, as if they would be chopped into bits if they were to move an inch. Mu Chen gazed in astonishment at the girl before him. Luo Li's strength had somewhat exceeded his expectations. However, after thinking about it, he gave a mocking laugh at himself. Luo Li's talent was no less than his own. In addition, she was more dedicated to training than he was. If not for him possessing the ability of a spiritual array master, he would truly not dare to pat his chest and say that he could genuinely suppress Luo Li in a real fight. Luo Li's eyes tightly locked onto the Spirit King that was explosively shooting towards them. At this moment, unexpectedly, her eyes started to slowly close. In the next instant, the long sword in her hand suddenly slashed down. Hum. The instant when her sword slashed down, the earth before her suddenly split open. The sword qi erratically condensed around the long sword. In a short span of a few breaths, all of sword qi had condensed onto the edge of the sword. Kai? The sword edge rippled and undulated, making the long sword look akin to being made by waves. In the next instant, an azure ray of light suddenly swept out. The azure light beam was so quick that one's naked eye would not be able to catch it. Everyone could only see a ray of light shoot past, before hearing a sonic boom that filled the skies. Even the air was split into two. Within the middle, there seemed to be residual undulating sword qi, causing the air to separate, unable to fuse back. The temperature of that stretch of the world appeared to instantly drop at this moment. Mu Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed, the pores across his entire body tightened up when Luo Li's sword slashed down. This was a reaction that would happen when he was faced with an extremely dangerous sensation. Luo Li's slash wasn't overly magnificent. However, the frightening power contained under the tranquility would make other people feel horrified. Mu Chen raised his head to look at the azure ray of light that was formed by the sword qi condensed to the pinnacle point, which had already chopped down on the body of the Spirit King, before passing through it. The mountain range in the distance was successively split into two. The areas that were split apart were as glossy and reflective as a mirror. A mountain range that was at least 1,000 feet long was quietly sliced apart. Bang! Rumble! The gigantic Spirit King was still violently rushing towards Mu Chen and Luo Li, as if it had not received the slightest bit of damage. A shade of paleness appeared on Luo Li's face. Her lovable figure faintly trembled, before a hand came from behind and embraced her waist. Tilting her head, she sent a faint smile towards Mu Chen. Mu Chen pulled her right hand over and looked at the bloodstains that were present. He could not help but feel some pain in his heart as he cleaned away the bloodstains. Feeling helpless, he said to her, "Why did you risk your life for this? I'm able to finish this up." Luo Li smiled, however, she did not say anything as she stared at Mu Chen, who was looking at her dearly. The two of them had seemingly not cared about the Spirit King that was rushing over. In an instant, the Spirit King had already arrived. However, just as it was about to make contact with the mountain peak they were on, its gigantic body suddenly split apart. Turning into two halves, they rumbled as they fell to the sides, causing the mountain peaks below to be leveled into flat ground. As smoke and dust filled the sky, the shaking of the earth slowly came to a stop. Mu Chen's eye stared indifferently at the Spirit King that had split apart. The latter's split body rapidly transformed into a crystal, while rapidly shrinking at the same time. After a short span of a number of breaths, the gigantic Spirit King had turned into two clumps of scorching suns, illuminating the entire stretch of the world. Terrifying spiritual energy radiated from within the two halves, and one could faintly discern that the spirit crystal's halves that were present were the ones that the Spirit King had previously eaten. In addition, the purple color had turned darker, with the spiritual energy within even more terrifying. This was the spiritual light. However, calling it a spirit crystal was clearly more suitable. Zhao Qingshan and the rest in the distance had regained their clarity, due to the eye-piercing brilliance. Upon doing so, they stared in shock at the two eye-piercing brilliance as uncontrollable greed erupted within their eyes. This was the spiritual light at the Spirit King rank. If they could get that, their spiritual empowerment this time would definitely be exceedingly perfect. They could even take this opportunity to break through to heavenly completion stage. The eyes of both Zhao Qingshan and Mu Fengyang turned red as they shot a look at each other. With a clench of their teeth, they abruptly shot out. At this time, their intelligence had seemingly dropped. Although Mu Chen and Luo Li were formidable, the bitter battle earlier had clearly left them weakened now. Now was the best chance for them. Xu Huang's gaze slightly shook as he looked at the eye-piercing brilliance. However, in the end, he only gave a soft sigh and did not take any action, before shooting a cold look at Zhao Qingshan and Mu Fengyang. He could be considered as having interacted with Mu Chen before, and knew how difficult it was to deal with this youth. Therefore, as for these two fellows who wanted to snatch the things in his hand, Xu Huang did not assume that was an intelligent decision. Although Mu Chen and Luo Li's consumption of spiritual energy might be extremely large, with Mu Chen's character, Xu Huang would absolutely not believe there wasn't any contingency plans prepared. In the far distance, Mu Chen embraced Luo Li, however, a coldness blanketed his black pupils. Looking at the two figures explosively shooting over, a mocking arc appeared from the corner of his mouth. Luo Li had also discovered their actions, as chilling intent surfaced on her lovable face on the spot. "You two have finally watched enough, huh?" Mu Chen sent an indifferent smile towards the two incoming people while speaking out. Zhao Qingshan's and Mu Fengyang's eyes sparkled, however, they appeared to be unwilling to look at Mu Chen. Obviously, when the latter had given the Spirit King serious injuries, it had given them great pressure at the same time. At this time, they did not dare to underestimate him, like they previously did. Snatched the spiritual light and split up. With a low roar, Zhao Qingshan shot towards the spiritual light on the left, while Mu Fengyang did so to the right. Mu Chen coldly stared at them. With a clench of his palm, a metal ball full of potholes appeared in his hands. With a flick, the metal ball shot out. Instantly, a myriad of colors blossomed as an incomparably gigantic spiritual array immediately condensed. Extending out, it enveloped the locations where the two clumps of spiritual light were. He had long discovered the fellows that were spying on them from the distance. However, did they think he would not have a single contingency plan when he fought the Spirit King till both sides suffered injuries? HMPH. Zhao Qingshan and Mu Fengyang's incoming figures hurriedly halted in distress. They looked at the spiritual array that was expanding with some trepidation. The threat brought by this spiritual array was not any weaker than the spiritual array that Mu Chen had arranged earlier. If they were insistent on rushing in, they might be instantly enveloped by the spiritual array. However, they did not have the confidence to meet with a spiritual array of this grade. This bastard. Mu Fengyang clenched and gnashed his teeth. He never expected Mu Chen would have any contingency plans. Let's go. Clenching his teeth, Zhao Qingshan immediately turned away and abruptly left. The preparation that Mu Chen had left them without a single chance. Mu Fengyang was clearly not as decisive as Zhao Qingshan, hesitating for a while before turning to leave. Since you're here, then don't leave. However, just as Mu Fengyang had just turned his body, the cold voice of Mu Chen had already rang out. As he turned his head back to take a glance, he was dumbstruck to see that the gigantic spiritual array had seemingly enveloped over. This immediately frightened him till his soul left his body and without a single trace of fighting intent as he hurriedly fled. HMPH. Mu Chen coldly snorted. With a move of his body, a dragon roar resounded out, and he disappeared at this moment. In the next instant, he appeared. He was like a spectre that had already appeared behind Mu Fengyang. Scram off! Mu Chen's body suddenly erupted with lightning, while his skin appeared to have a faint silver metallic look. Clenching his hand, he sent a fist rumbling out. Bang! Berserk spiritual energy swept out as a white tiger appeared, as though it was condensed by the gale of Mu Chen's fist. Without a single shred of mercy, it rumbled towards Mu Fengyang, who was unable to muster any defense in time. You? The astonishing spiritual energy coming from behind him caused Mu Fengyang's face to turn deathly pale. At this moment, there wasn't enough time for him to even turn around, with the only thing he could do was to wrap his body in the spirit armor. Ding! Mu Chen's fist violent smashed against the spirit armor, instantly causing metallic sounds to ring out and sparks to shoot out. A mouthful of blood violently spurted out from Mu Fengyang, as his body was like a kite with a broken string, instantly dropping to the ground, creating a huge hole in the process. Mu Fengyang miserably laid at the bottom of the deep hole. Cracks extended out of the armor on his body. This armor was almost shattered by the Spirit King's slap after he attempted to set up Mu Chen. After suffering a violent fist from Mu Chen, it had already reached its limit. Mu Fengyang spurted mouthfuls of blood. His aura became depressed as terror filled his eyes. He never thought that Mu Chen would be that vicious, attacking just as he said that. It's a little too wasteful to use my spiritual array on the two of you, Mu Chen said with a cold smile. With a clench of his palm, the metal ball full of potholes returned to his hand. Mu Chen descended slightly. With a clasp of his hand, a giant boulder the size of a small hill was sucked over. Upon reaching his hand, he violently smashed it down on the seriously injured Mu Fengyang. No! As Mu Fengyang screamed out in terror, the giant boulder caused the ground to shake for a while. In the next instant, a streak of light descended from the sky. Piercing the giant boulder, it transported Mu Fengyang, who had already fainted from his injuries, out. As Mu Chen was dealing with Mu Fengyang, Zhao Qingshan had already escaped into the distance. Mu Chen only shot a look, before retracting his gaze. He did not have the intention to chase him, as the current him had truly consumed quite a bit of his strength. Wanting to smash Zhao Qingshan out of the spiritual light world might require him to use the metal ball. Obviously, Mu Chen was not willing to do so. Standing in mid-air, he shot a chilling gaze to a further distance. From there were still some people looking towards him. However, when they noticed Mu Chen's gaze shooting over, a cold shiver swept past them before they promptly retreated. Xu Huang looked at the youth with an imposing manner, standing in the air, before sighing. Gesturing with his hand, he said, "Let's go." Behind him, Xu Qingqing had also fallen silent as she bit her lip. Staring at the youthful figure, her heart felt uncomfortable, and no one would have imagined that even her most worshipped big brother would not even dare to provoke that fellow's ire. However, she had no choice but to admit that the current Mu Chen was truly much stronger than a few months ago. Perhaps, the greatest dark horse in this hunt would not be Zhao Qingshan or whoever, but the Mu Chen in front of her. This video will end here.